Embun pagi sapa hatiku, iringi langkah pasti hariku. Tak sabar bertemu yang ku damba selalu negeriku. Berpuluh musim tempa ilmuku, buatkan tekad baktiku selalu. Yang teruji sudah hanya untuk Indonesiaku. Universitas Indonesia, untuk cerdas bangsaku. Universitas Indonesia, untuk jaya negeriku. Universitas Indonesia, mata air ilmu pertiwiku. Bangkit Indonesia jaya, dipandu setiamu. Ukir sejarah gemilang kita. Berpuluh musim tempa ilmuku, buatkan tekad baktiku selalu. Yang teruji sudah hanya untuk Indonesiaku. Universitas Indonesia, untuk cerdas bangsaku. Universitas Indonesia, untuk jaya negeriku. Universitas Indonesia, mata air ilmu pertiwiku. Bangkit Indonesia jaya, dipandu setiamu. Ukir sejarah gemilang kita. Bangkit Indonesia jaya, dipandu setiamu. Ukir sejarah gemilang kita. Kita.
Kita semua nggak tahu, karena itu memang bagus 14 hari diam di rumah itu untuk memutuskan tali rantai COVID.
Di sini rumah kita yang terindah di dunia. Oh, tanah yang merdeka, negeri Indonesia. Karena ku tahu di sini ada cinta yang kan ku jaga selamanya, selamanya. Selamanya. Untuk wujudkan mimpi kita dengan janjiku bertekad selamanya. Indonesia
Asia, with its vast and steady growth, has turned itself into the leader of global economy. Indonesia, with its strategic position, has the chance to take the major role in this era. In order to build global partnerships and counteract the threats, strategic policies should be taken. To enhance the nation's competitive advantage, further approach through in-depth, comprehensive studies and researches are crucial. With our long history, has proved ourselves to be a reliable academic institution. After successfully adapting into distinct programs, in 2016, officially the program turned into School of Strategic and Global Studies. School of Strategic and Global Studies Universitas Indonesia contributes the cause by producing qualified human resources and studies. Situated in the heart of Jakarta, the School of Strategic and Global Studies provides a variety of courses on multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary studies at the master's levels.
In my humble opinion, I can say that I have a good impression at the first sight. An atmosphere and ambience here support us to gain more and achieve more other than merely classes and handouts.
I think that is a very promising because of the multidisciplinary approach that Universitas Indonesia offers us to study. For another reason, the situation that I actually got in the classes is a lot of interesting current issues that we're talking about, so it's academically fulfilling for me.
With dedicated and qualified lecturers from academic and practical background, School of Strategic and Global Studies Universitas Indonesia produce scholars and practitioners that will ready for global challenges. Together, we build the nation for a better world.
Terima kasih, Mas. Yes, please. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming today. So today event is we have an offline talk with a very honorable writer coming from far away from Italy, uh, Giuseppe CATOZZELLA. Is it correct, Giuseppe? Okay, thank you. Giuseppe Giuseppe is an UN Goodwill ambassador for UNHCR. We will ask him how he became that ambassador, yeah. And today I will moderate the session, and together with us we already have our beloved director of School of Strategic and Global Studies, Dr. Ator Subroto, and of course, uh, our beautiful Ibu Maria Battaglia, the director of Italian Cultural Institute in Jakarta, who is always sending beautiful artists and people, like professor, to give us opportunity to listen their works or their lecture. So I will today start with the welcoming speech from our director. Please, Pato, time is yours.
Thank you very much, and a very good morning to all of you, especially honorable guests. Here we have Direttrice di Istituto Italiano di Cultura, Dottoressa Maria Battaglia, and also we have honorable guest Giuseppe CATOZZELLA. Thank you very much for your time today, your valuable time to attend this workshop and seminar offline. And also Ibu Dr. Heni Saptatya, head of the research cluster also in multiculturalism and migration, also as the head of the European Studies program in the School of Strategic and Global Studies, Universitas Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, today event is presented by Istituto Italiano di Cultura in conjunction with our school, Strategic and Global Studies. Thank you again from us to Ibu Maria Battaglia for this opportunity, and also Giuseppe CATOZZELLA. He is a great writer from Italy because of Mr. Ibu Maria, we can hear and we can learn from Giuseppe from his perspective about this intriguing topic, literature and silence. So it's this title I think invite cross into our mind to imagine about what is it, literature and silence. As what Mr. Giuseppe CATOZZELLA talked to us earlier about the silence, I think so many writings come from produced by Mr. Giuseppe will give us so many insight from the perspective of humanity and also human rights. I think he will talk deeply about his writing, about also about the real situation and real story. So I think we welcome you very much for this event. Thank you again, Mr. Giuseppe CATOZZELLA, and also Director of Italian Cultural Institute, Ibu Maria Battaglia, for this event. I hope we can make this event more frequent in the future. So connection people to people between Indonesia and Italy much more great. Thank you very much and enjoying the discussion and a very good morning. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Pak Ator. Now I will invite Ibu Maria Battaglia to give her opening speech. Please.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank Universitas Indonesia, especially the research cluster of the Multilateralism, Migration and European Studies Master Program for its willingness to collaborate with the Italian Culture Institute. Thank you, Dr. Eni, Head of the Postgraduate Program of European Studies. Thank you, Dr. Arthur Subroto, Director of the School of Strategic and Global Studies, for this opportunity today to cooperate and collaborate together to spread the Italian culture, but not only Italian culture, also Indonesian culture, and also all humanities between us, between the two countries. And we have the pleasure to present today Giuseppe CATOZZELLA, a writer, but not only writer, also journalist. And it's the second time he came to Indonesia. Last time, I think it was in 2018 for a seminar about his books and also his activities for my human rights. And I would like to say a few words about the activity of Giuseppe CATOZZELLA. He's a popular Italian writer, was born in Milan, and studied philosophy at the University of Milan. After graduating, he moved to Australia. After living in Sydney for an extended period, he returned to his native Milan. He's been nominated by the UN Goodwill Ambassador. CATOZZELLA has published across multiple literary genres, including plays, short stories, and novels, and writes on the main Italian newspapers like La Repubblica and L'Espresso. His novel, Don't Tell Me You're Afraid, dealing with the refugees crisis in the Mediterranean Sea, was a very popular and a critical success in Italy and in the world. And also many important awards in Italy and in the world. It won other prizes in France, Spain, Holland, and the Arabic world. For his last novel is Italiana, is here on this on table. Italiana, published in Italy in February 2021 by Mondadori, won the Alessandro Manzoni International Prize and also for criticism section, and was recommended for the Commisso Prize. A TV series based on Italiana is in the works. On 24 May 2022, a children's novel illustrated by Ernesto Anderle, Il ragazzo contro la guerra, it's the second book, here, Una storia di Gino Strada, was released for Mondadori. In this work, important work, CATOZZELLA brings back not only the figure of Gino Strada through real events, witnessing the attack on the Twin Towers on 11 September 2001, but also the enchanted gaze of a child. Or only a few words about the work of Italian Cultural Institute. The Italian Cultural Institute is the official Italian government agency for the promotion of cultural exchange. The 89 Italian cultural institutes around the world are places for encounter and dialogue between intellectuals and artists, Italians living abroad, and anyone wishing to cultivate a relationship with our country. But I would like to say also, to tell about our work with universities, especially in Indonesia. For example, we work especially to spread the Italian language in Indonesia at universities. For example, Minister of Foreign Affairs offer some economical contribution to spread the Italian language at universities. For example, for year 2022-2023, some universities have received the contribution, like, for example, Universitas Nacional, Trisakti, Negri, in Jakarta, Diponegoro, Semarang, and so on. But furthermore, the Italian government also provided scholarships for Indonesian students. It's very important. It's a tool important for us, for you, to study in Italy and to know Italian culture. And this year, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation has awarded the scholarship to 10 Indonesian students who have been accepted at the Italian universities to continue their studies in engineering, Italian language and literature, architecture, economics, medicine, and so on. Thank you so much for your attention, and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Maria. Now we will follow the, what do you call it, the lecture from our writer, Giuseppe CATOZZELLA. So before that, I will write the resume of Giuseppe. Giuseppe CATOZZELLA, born 18th of June 1976, is a popular Italian writer. He was born in Milan, wow, and studied philosophy at the University of Milan. After graduating, he moved to Australia. After living in Sydney for an extended period, he returned to his native Milan. He has been nominated by the UN Goodwill Ambassador, UNHCR. Catolese has published across multiple literary genres, including plays, short stories, and novels, and writes on the main Italian newspaper, La Repubblica and L'Espresso. His novel, Don't Tell Me Your is novel, the title of novel, yeah? Don't Tell Me You're Afraid, dealing with the refugee crisis in the Mediterranean Sea. Was a popular and critical success in Italy and in the world. The novel sold more 500,000 copies in 40 countries. In Italy, it won the Premio Strega Giovanni 2014, and it was shortlisted for the Premio Strega 2014. It was also shortlisted at the International IMPAC Dublin Literary Award, and it won other prizes in France, Spain, Holland, and the Arabic world. It has been translated into English by Anna Appel and published in the US and Canada by Penguin, and in UK and in uh, UK and Commonwealth by Faber and Faber. A major movie is in preparation from Don't Tell Me You're Afraid. So maybe next year we will see the movie, yeah? We will screen here and invite you again. Don't Tell Me You're Afraid, Catolissa published the novel The Great Future in 2016, and You Sign, this is a title also, yeah, another title, in 2018, from which a movie is in preparation. His last novel is Italiana, published in Italy in February 2024 by Mondadori. Won the Alejandro Manzoni International Prize, the Elba Literary Prize, the Basilicata Literary Prize for Gender Equality section, and the Brianza Prize for Criticism section, and was recommended for the Comiso Prize, and a TV series based on Italiana is in the works. On 24 May 2020, a children's novel illustrated by Ernesto Anderle, Il ragazzo contra la guerra, una storia di Gino Strada. I hope the pronunciation is correct. Is it? Okay, good. And in English, it's The Boy Against the War, a story of Gino Strada, was released for Mondadori. In these works, CATOZZELLA brings back not only the figure of Gino Strada through real events, witnessing the attack on the Twin Towers on 11 September 2001, but also the enhanced gaze of a child. So we welcome our writer to the podium to tell us his works. Please, Giuseppe.
Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for being here. Of course, I want to thank the Universitas Indonesia. Thank you for having me here. The Istituto Italiano di Cultura, la direttrice Maria Battaglia. It's an honor and a pleasure. Okay, so I will be doing a lecture on literature and silence. It's going to last approximately 40 minutes, so relax. Sit back, just in the airplanes, fasten your seatbelts. No, I mean, yeah. Okay, so I will start this lecture on the relationship between literature and silence needs to start by focusing on the theme that suggested me the same relationship. So this theme is one of the most important themes for humanity, and therefore one of the most important themes for literature itself. All literatures from all over the world by any civilizations start with this theme and never stop focusing on it. For example, I have just come back from Ubud Writers and Readers Festival in Ubud, and just realized that there were many panels focusing on this theme. But no wonder why, because as I just said, it's a fundamental theme. Me, myself, I did like 2 panels there in Ubud on this theme. The theme that I'm talking about, and that will drive us to the Middle Earth, just to quote J.R.R. Tolkien, between literature and silence, is the journey. The journey is the theme of our time, which has returned to open us up to the epic, to awaken us up to the epic, which means the sense of our own destiny, to the daily choice of putting into play everything we have, which is one thing only, and at the same time the most important thing of all, which is our own life. This is epic, just like the Lord of the Rings. But if the journey is the theme of our time, this is not only because in recent years there has been a return to a level of human movement comparable to that which occurred during and at the end of the Second World War. Just think about this huge number. According to UNHCR, which is the Agency for Refugees, the UN agency, more than 100 million of people moved around the world last year. 100 million people, the vast majority of which amongst the borders of their own country, from areas of conflict and poverty and famine to areas of peace. But it's not only because of this huge number, 100 million of people that moved from an area of the world to another. This might not be enough. The journey is the theme of our time. If the journey is the theme of our time, it is because in our time, the call of the first narrative that we have made of ourselves finally resounds. I am speaking as someone that comes from the Western world now, but the same thing could be said for all civilizations and literatures. And the core of the first narrative of the origin is irresistible for us. Because the origin, from being something that is outside us and from which we start, over time becomes something that that has taken home inside us without maybe even us knowing it. And that from inside us, the origin silently calls us. I'm speaking of Homer, of course, and of the nostos, which is the desire or return. of the desire of the end of the journey, the return home after having traveled around the world, after having made the war to affirm our identity. The desire of home uh, is the desire of a place where we are welcomed and feel in peace. I am speaking of the Odyssey, which together with the Iliad is the mother of all Western narrations, of the way in which we Westerners, we are sons of the Greeks and then the Latins and then of the Christianism, tell the story of our life. So the Odyssey, the Iliad, Homer, these poems are the bricks of how we tell the story of our life. Because if we think about it, the journey, which is the matrix of all the stories that concern us, it's the structure of our own life itself. If we think about it, we are all in a journey. Our life itself is a journey. We are all born without asking. None of us has asked to be born. We have the shape of a trajectory of an arrow shot without knowing where, until we somehow understand that the place we are going or that we are intent to go is exactly where we started from. And we begin to embody the nostos, the desire to return home, to peace. Therefore, rather than being on a journey, we can say that we ourselves are the journey. The journey is not something we do, but it's something we are. We can stand still, never move, but just look in the mirror or look at some of our signs from the past, a photograph, for example, to have the evidence that travel is something that lives within us, that we are not hosting it, but it is hosting us. So if we are on a journey, the desire to return drives us without, in the beginning, us even knowing it. Because every journey begins as a wandering. That is, as a separation from the past, from the well-known, as a blind detachment from all the known, but that ends up with the nostos, the return. So we are all migrants, one could say, in other words. Each of us is the result of an endless chain of migrations behind us, which determine us. Each of us is the epic victory of countless people who preceded us on their travels. Which one of us? This is why each one of us is unique and wonderful. Each one of us in his own way. Because each of us, to put it in Darwinian terms, is the result of many victorious heroes. This is how we experience the world, and we taste life as a continuous experience of the new, which is something that certainly characterizes the youngest amongst us, who have yet not experienced life and seek its novelty in everything, but which characterizes everyone, which characterizes life itself. In fact, the first phase of the journey of the detachment is exactly the research, the knowledge of oneself. It doesn't exist knowledge of ourselves. It doesn't exist the story of our own history without having separated ourselves, from our past, from our origin. There is no other way to become a human being, if not in wandering, in detachment from ourselves. This is the research phase, which we do when we are young. But as we said, true self-knowledge begins only when we begin to experience the desire of return. This is why I said that return is the real journey, because it is the conscious journey, the journey that recognizes itself as a journey. Again, to refer to literature and to the origins, Philo Alessandrino tells it well in De Abramo when he comments on the passage from Genesis, which is a book of the Bible, the Genesis, in which God orders Abraham to leave his land to go towards the one he will indicate to him. Among those who take to the sea, writes Philo, there are also those who are pushed to see foreign lands because they are animated by the search for things they previously did not know, a search that gives their soul delight and benefit. But he continues, these travelers are in great hurry to see their father's soil again, to hug their families again, to enjoy the most welcome sight of relatives and friends remembered with nostalgia. It is difficult not to think of Ulysses, who on the coast of Ojija mourns his return, or of the prodigal son, who after having dissipated his father's inheritance and fallen into poverty, decides to return home to his father. After all, the desire for a return is inscribed in the first chapter of Genesis as a logical consequence of the loss of Eden, the paradise, and guides humanity's journey until the end of time. And then this paradigm casts its shadow on all Western literature. If we think of the theological novel with return, if we think of Dante's comedy, which is as much a return journey to Beatrice, his beloved, as a gigantic exodus towards the search of truth of the poet. Or we might think of Torquato Tasso, The Created World, John Milton's Paradise Lost, for example. But Luca is the inventor of one of the most incredible stories of the return, that of the prodigal son, as I just said, which is the origin of an extraordinary narrative adventure that reaches the present day. If we just think, for example, of Emmanuel Carrère's novel called The Kingdom, the French writer. So journey is not only a right for our civilization, but is much more. It is what makes us up. But what is happening in our time that marks an epochal difference with respect to the narrative of the journey we are used to, what is happening is that the traditional tripartite division, departure, wandering, return, landing, is cancelled nowadays. And it was taken off, it was cancelled because politics got in the way, which has extrinsic interest with respect to the real narrative of who we are, since it pursues a pure numerical consensus. And this, in times which forgot its own origin, is achieved more easily with fear than with love. But we will talk about love at the end of this lecture. What happened, and is there for all to see, is that the last movement, the one of the return, of the landing, is told as a movement nowadays that is outside the law. We put it outside the law. We made it illicit. an illicit movement. We made it illegal to be blocked, to be removed, to be repressed. But if the return is banned, we found ourselves suspended in a journey that has no landing and no return, and therefore loses its meaning. If the arrival of the journey is blocked, our life itself becomes meaningless. And the obstruction of the meaning of our life has led to a phenomenon that is all the more evident the more it is hidden. On the one hand, a great noise from those who have not made the journey, and on the other hand, a great, enormous, abysmal silence by those who have made the journey. So we have gone from the sacred writings, the Bible, and from the great literature, Odyssey, that have always told the return, to the most deafening silence of the protagonist of the journey. Well, what I did, deafened by so much silence, I went to listen to this silence, feeling that going and listen to that silence could be a right way to understand where words and literature are originated. So that silence, the silence of the people that made the journey and don't say anything. It must be said that we have never lived in a noisier era. Wherever we turn our heads, there is someone talking. On our phones, on TV, on the radio, the newspapers scream. Each of us every day shout from a social network. But in an era like this, it's even more obvious the contrast between someone who did not make the journey and screams loud. I'm talking about the Western world, the rich world, and the abysmal silence of the part of those who made it, the so-called others, the poor world. But after all, this is what Edward Said, the famous Palestinian American essayist and professor at Columbia University, already said in his fundamental book called Orientalism. He said, Orientalism is the set of institutions created by the Western world in order to manage its relations with the East. This involves economics, political and military forces. But cultural factors, he says, are also necessary. Cultural factors, TV, radio, news, internet, novels, movies, TV series, all of which are spoken by a Western voice. What we as Western people have in front of us is an image of the world in its entirety, but always told from one side only, our own voice. So we feel that something is missing, which is the voice of the other, the voice of the people that make the journey. We miss it. What we do not exactly hear is the voice of people who scare us. That is, of the people who made the journey that is now considered illegal, because we put it as illegal. I'm talking about the people we are at war with, the foreigners, the people who come to take our work, our social security, our tranquility, as well as our country, the land, its beauties. This is what the propaganda says against them. So to hear their voice and to try to deal with that silence which originates the original narration of ourselves, I went to Lampedusa. I went to Idomeni, which is the refugee camp humanity should be ashamed of, on the border between Greece and Macedonia. I went to Calais, another refugee camp, if possible even worse than Idomeni, called the jungle between France and the United Kingdom. I went to Somalia, I went to South Sudan, I went to Niger, I went to Ethiopia, I went to Palestine, etc., etc. And what I discovered was an even more deafening silence. The only thing I saw was their eyes. There were no voices. Is it working? Yes. And their eyes spoke of hunger, need, and fear. So again, silence from the voice. Before the journey, there is no talk and no words, because you don't know what to expect, and because you are afraid of dying during the journey and losing everything you have, which is your family and your language. At the end of the journey, no one speaks because they are afraid and exhausted. They do not speak the language of the country that they arrived to, and they are exhausted, amazed at being alive and at what there is at the end of the tunnel that could have easily led them to death. They expect life, there's no life. They expected happiness, there's no happiness. Not a relief, not what one had imagined for months or years, but a country and a people where they are normally seen as invaders and therefore locked up. That's what we do. We lock them up when they arrive. It's not exactly what you expect when you travel months or years to escape war or starvation. So there is not talk, no words. They probably expect better times to do this, to start speaking. So there is silence again. So what we do is fill the unbearable and deafening silence with our own words. And our official words are usually not words of welcome, as Edward Said has shown us. Therefore, there is no dialogue. There is only a deafening, continuous monologue. This is why I went there, I tried to listen to that silence, and I wrote a trilogy in which I gave a voice, I lent my own voice. Indeed, I let it take possession of my own voice to the other. And what this and that is why this trilogy consists of 3 movements, which are the journey, first novel, the war, the second novel, and the landing, the third novel. Because I believe I have come close to an important thing. If we do not tell about our journey, if we do not tell about the reasons of our journey and the final part of our journey, and especially if we do not listen to the journey of the other, the reasons of his journey and the final part of his journey, if we don't listen to the nostos, to the desire of the return to peace, to the desire of the return home, to the need of coming back home, to a place in which we feel welcomed and in peace, well, if we don't, we cannot have access to the most original part of our nature. We cannot call ourselves humans, after all. We need to listen to stories of the return to be called humans. Just as it was in the Iliad and in the Odyssey, first openness to the personal war that moves the journey of each one of us. Then openness to the journey as wandering and searching to a new hope of life. And finally, the return, the landing, at the end of the journey, where we are welcome for what we are, for how new beings we have become due to the journey itself. The journey always changes us forever. And this is why we dream of it. When we leave, when we start the research phase, the wandering phase, we dream of being changed. We dream of leaving our parents and our homes back and become something new. This is why we leave. But then, at a certain point, we feel the need of coming back and being welcomed for how new we have become, because we have become new. But in order to listen to our journey, and that or the other, we need to open up to the concept of a past, of a present, and of a future. This is what a journey builds: past, present, and future. So we need to open up to memory. Why is the memory of evil unable to change humanity? What is the use of memory? Primo Levi asked himself in his masterpiece called If This Is a Man, which recounts the Holocaust. Terrible consideration, memory. Primo Levi says, why is the memory of evil unable to change humanity? What is the use of memory? We remember the evil, but we won't change our future. That's the worst thing we could understand of ourselves. So the memory. Animals live in an infinite present. They have no memory. And that's because they don't think. They can't think. Nietzsche says in The Gay Science, adding that he was jealous of animals because that was their salvation, because thinking can lead to madness. Hence, memory and thinking. But thinking is nothing but a silent conversation that each one of us has with himself, said Plato. Plato, one of the fundamental bricks in our way, in the Western way of thinking and seeing the world. Plato is the inventor of the dialogue, and with it, the inventor of our form of thinking. Dialogue was his way of writing the teachings of his teacher, which was Socrates, who was a wise man and in fact never wrote a single word. He never wrote a single word, but Plato did. So memory, thinking, and dialogue. In the beginning, it was the Word, says the Bible. Read, according to the Quran, is the first verse or the first paragraph that the Archangel Gabriel dictated to Muhammad on Mount Hira. But there is no spoken or written word without at least two people, or even one, ourselves, but acting as two, talking silently to ourselves, would Plato say. So in the beginning, it was the two, we could say. Even us, but acting as two, talking to ourselves. This is how our soul is born, according to Plato. The soul is nothing, our soul, our intimacy is nothing to Plato than the fact that we talk to ourselves. Maybe we can realize that maybe when we do it before going to bed, we are lying on our beds and we think about what we did, what we have to do the next day, and what fears us or make us dream. When we do that, when we talk to ourselves, Plato said, this is what the soul is. So in the beginning was the two, we could say, but here is the dialogue again. But if we look more closely, we discover that we often have to be surprised. It's not we who consciously decide to say something we consider important, for example, an urgent truth, an incredible secret, a scandal, to someone we intentionally choose. If we think more carefully about it, it usually works the other way around. We are surprised that we have told a secret to someone we never thought we would have tell it to. So the truth comes out, we can say, and it comes out shared. It is the truth who decides who we share it with. We ourselves are surprised. So yes, God was right, Allah was right. In the beginning, it was the Word. But what the world tells us, always shared in a dialogue, is first of all who we love. That is the people with whom we have decided to share our truth, which is our community, our beloved ones. That is who we are. So memory, thinking, dialogue, love. Here it comes love. In an era without openness to the journey of the other, and an era without openness to the journey of the other is not only an era of silence, but also an era without love. And in fact, we are at war. Russia invaded Ukraine, for example. War is actually everywhere in the world, in many countries. When I went to Idomeni camp between Greece and Macedonia, instead of the spoken words, I saw a piece of cardboard, brown. A very small girl held it tightly in her hands. She could have been 8 or 9 years old. It said, "Please open the border." Just this, please, please open the borders. Because they were stuck there, illegal. Final part of the journey, illegal. So locked up. And she wrote on a cardboard, "Please open the borders." No one screamed, just "please," written on a piece of cardboard, kind, silent. I looked into her eyes, and her eyes spoke to me of what they couldn't say with words, because to pronounce the words, you have to trust and love. Actually, if we think more carefully about it, we must be loved. But this is the time of silence and the time of the absence of dialogue. Everyone grows up only if he's dreamed. Is a beautiful verse by Danilo Dolci, who is an Italian poet. Every one of us grows up only if he's dreamed. We only grow up if someone else dreams of us. We only grow up if we are the dream of someone else. Primo Levi, referring to the Holocaust, wrote, "Why is the memory of evil unable to change humanity? What is the use of memory?" But he also wrote in the same book, "If understanding is impossible, trying to know is necessary, because what happened can come back, consciousness can again be seduced and obscured." And then he continued, "Ours too." So I think that keeping the story of our journey alive and keeping on trying to listen to the silence from which words and literature are originated is one of the missions to which people who write are called. Thank you very much.
Of sadness of migration and to make us realize that there are so many facts that cannot be voiced by the immigrant and those who are doing migration. And what you mentioned, silence is the time of the absence of the dialogue, is so deep when those who are doing the journey cannot voice what they what happened with them during the journey. So I think we have to start the question and answer session. Please come forward. I will join you. Thank you. Bapak Ibu sekalian, terima kasih. Thank you very much. Actually, there is no one who speak English here or speak Indonesian. It's okay. They will ask you in English, of course. Of course, understood. You know. Oke. Kami mempersilahkan Bapak Ibu untuk mengajukan pertanyaan. Nanti kalau mau mengajukan pertanyaan, maju ke sana. Ya, memperkenalkan diri dan memperkenalkan diri dan mengajukan pertanyaan. So I invite the audience to ask the question and approach the microphone and introduce themselves and raise the question. Here. Please.
Hello. Good afternoon. Okay. Good afternoon. Selamat siang. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Faisal. I'm from Sukabumi, West Java, and now I work at Darul Amsor Islamic Senior High School. First of all, that I would like to say, Mr. CATOZZELLA, I like your representation and your story about the refugee, the migration. It's one of the interesting topic. And the question is that what makes you interest into this topic? Because of maybe you see that as we know that Europe face so many migration. And then the second question is that how did you get the inspiration to make this book? Does it based on your experience? And of course that as you mentioned before that you've been live in Australia and maybe from I assume that you met someone who became I mean like an Australian and he becomes the citizen, but before that he or she was the immigrant, the illegal immigrant. And then another question, the last question is does it makes you back again to Milan, since you always mention since you talk about the journey? So maybe when you go to Australia, live for many years, and then you feel like, oh, I feel like I lost my identity, and then you decided to go back to Italy. That's my question. Thank you. Grazie.
Okay, thank you.
Are you going to answer now or
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, because it's already 3 questions, so I will forget. How, like, why am I interested in this topic? You said, I cannot be sure. Like, you never can be, sure of what a writer can never be sure of what drives him or her to spend years, because writing a novel, a book, means like years of work. So it becomes kind of an obsession. and you don't know. The only thing you know, it's something very intimate, very deep inside you, because as I said, it takes years of work. So it has to be something very deep and very intimate that drives you. What I thought, it might be because I was born in Milan, but and I was raised in Milan, which is in the north of Italy, but from a family that comes from the south of Italy. Now, south of Italy and north of Italy are kind of like two different countries inside one. Like they are very, very different. And there is actually when I was young, there was so much racism against the people from the south. Yeah, like very much. So I grew up with the feeling of being a foreigner in my own country, basically, like in my own city, because they considered me as someone like different. So I think this could have, started my interest in this topic, or in the topic of feeling to be the other seen by someone else. Yeah, I always felt that. And so this probably drove me to be interested in the south of the world, in the poorest world, in their reasons, and understanding that their reasons are never spoken. And this drove me to Somalia, where I went in 2012 for the first time to meet this young boy who used to be a Shabab, which is a fundamentalist warrior, and came out of the war. He wanted to meet me and tell me his story. So his story became the second novel of the trilogy, the novel telling the war. And while I was there and spending a month with him, with an interpreter, of course, and a mediator, I met the story of Samia, the story of the first novel, which is the story of a young Somali girl who dreamed to run because she was fast. So she went to Beijing 2008 Olympic Games. She lost. She wanted to go to London 2012 Olympic Games. And in order to do that, she left Somalia. She left Somalia, and she died in the Mediterranean Sea. So this is the first novel of the trilogy, called Don't Tell Me You Are Afraid. Then there's the second one called The Great Future, which is the story of Ali, the Shabab boy. And then there's the third novel of the trilogy, which is called And You Shine, which is again taken by a real story, and is set in a small village in the south of Italy where everyone left the village due to migration issues, because there's no job there. And then a small boy finds inside a tower, an ancient tower, a family of seven migrants. And this family is taken out of the tower and changes the life of this small village forever. So the third novel of the trilogy deals with racism, our own racism, the dynamic of conflict against the other. Yeah, and about me going to Australia, yes. I went there after finishing my university and my degree. I worked in Italy for 6 months, and then I left Italy because I hated my country, because it's a very corrupted country. It's you know, the country that generated the mafia. So like we have like it's a very difficult country for young people, because it doesn't allow, you know, merit, or it doesn't allow um, people of value to be awarded. It allows only, you know, family connections. So if you are a young person, just like you are, and want to do things, Italy is not the best place to grow up, because it makes you things difficult, you know. So yeah, so I went to Australia. I just wanted to go to the farthest place on earth, and then yeah, I felt a foreign there, of course. But then I only stayed there for 1.5 years, no more than that. And then I came back, and after I came back, I actually never stopped traveling after that. And yeah, so yeah, the experience in Australia might as well have you know, have been important for me. Yeah. Thank you. Oh well, the feeling to return to Milan. Yeah, as I said, well, my last novel is called Italiana, and it actually deals with the soul of my country, of Italy, through another real story of a woman. So my actual feeling, as I always say in Italy too, I write on many newspapers. Man, I go on TV. I always say this thing. I have a relationship of love hate with my country, because of what I said before. Of course, I love it because it's my country, and I always want to return. But I also hate it, and I don't want my son to grow up in Italy, for example, because of what I said. Because it teaches you that merit. It teaches you that strengthen and all good things are no value. No value. You could study a lot, you could force yourself to do and reach your best, you could do whatever you want, and there is always another, you know, another way things work out, and it's the connections you and your family have. If you are without connections, it's difficult. So yeah, that's why I hate it. I tried to change it with my books, but and with what I write on newspapers, and I always try. For example, my second novel, my second book, is about the mafia in the north of Italy. Like we always told the mafia in the south, but the real mafia is in the north. Is where I live in Milan. Is where money are. And so, yeah, I I did try, and I do try to change things with my work as a writer, but it's very difficult. Italy is a very ancient and old country, and corruption is too strong. So yeah, I want to go back, but I'm always happy when I leave.
Okay, Giuseppe, I think we have another two people to ask the question. Please, Mas Made. So actually, before Mas Made, actually many people has a feeling of love and hate to to their country. But you know, I believe that the hate come up because they love too much to the country. Yeah. Please.
Hello, Mr. Giuseppe CATOZZELLA. I'm sorry if I spell pronounce your name wrongly.
Oh, it's good. Thank you.
Um, I am Made. I am a doctoral candidate in School of Strategy and Global Studies. Ibu Heni is one of my promoter, promoter, and one my academic supervision. And as a writer, I couldn't agree more. You will understand about happiness and sadness of the refugee all over the world. But I need to emphasize that uh, Italy has a new prime minister. She has elected in the end of September as a coalition of the far right. Because I'm interested in political and security, so I need to ask this: what is your view in the future about the far right coalition? It if we put it to the refugee issue, because Silvio Berlusconi and uh, Matteo, what is that?
Salvini.
Salvini, yes, Matteo Salvini. Both of them, I I bet they will force not to accept the refugee, but Mrs. Giorgia Meloni, she committed to European Union to stick in the policy of European Union, but both of them, I think, not. And what of your view about that as an Italian narrative? And the second one is only one. Okay.
Thank you.
It's about what will you do in future as a UN, as a CR, Goodwill, UN Goodwill, UNHCR in the future to go against the policy for from the far right countries in Europe, to against the quota of refugee in Europe. Thank you.
Yeah. So like what you asked me, it's actually public in Italy. I am an editorialist for two main newspapers in Italy. Since the new government is there, I actually wrote like my comments and my editorials on some of the things they did. Yeah, I think that we have to be uh, aware of the fact that since the Second World War, for the first time, a far right party has gained power in Italy. It's something. It's something like after Mussolini, for the first time, we have a post-fascist party. It is something not, not 100% normal. And of course, they are politicians, so what they do, they just act as any politician. So they say something publicly and they do something else. This is what like that's their job. So to keep quiet the public opinion and leaders of other countries and the Europe Union, they speak publicly about something, but then they act differently. So what we actually already saw in these few days about the migrant issue that you were talking about, they already stopped 2 boats in the Mediterranean. So we are back to what we experienced a few years ago, 3 years ago, when Matteo Salvini again was Minister of Interior, acting as Prime Minister. He is under judgment now for having stopped a boat like 3 years ago for weeks in the Mediterranean Sea, and on that boat many people died, because you cannot survive under the sun without water, without food for weeks. That's inhuman. So we are facing the same thing now, again. But of course they speak like on the, like they don't say it. They don't say it. As they don't say, they deny that they are a post-fascist party. They say we are not a post-fascist party, but they are a post-fascist party. And they even have pictures of Mussolini in their homes and statues of Mussolini. That's their story. But publicly, to keep the international community, more tranquil, they say, no, we are not fascists. We will accept migrants. We will work towards Europe to accept them more, and blah, blah, blah. But what they do, or what they did actually in these few weeks, is acting the other way. So we have to be aware of this. And second part of the question, yeah, okay. Okay, I won't answer then.
So yeah, we have another one. Before she says something, I like to emphasize what you have said. Yeah, Italy is not best place to grow up. Oh, it's not true, because Italy make you the one who said it's not the best place to grow up, but you become, remarkable author. So it's the best place to grow up.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. No, you cannot. You cannot take exceptions. I am an exception. Well, yes, like not like it's not like that every people like that everyone but exceptions are not to be considered. You have to see like what normally happens. Yeah, and you have to think that in Italy we always talk publicly about the migration thing. In Italy, like every year, we received a few thousand of migrants, but we never say, according to answer your question, we never say that 200,000 young Italian guys and girls every year leave Italy because it's not the right place to grow up. 200,000 Italians every year go away. But we always talk about people, a few thousand people that come in. No, they it's difficult that they come back, because when they go to US, to Canada, like to first world countries, they see how it is like. They are appreciated for their jobs, for who they are, and they can reach a very high career. It's difficult that they come back then. So and the world is full of Italians in every field that reached like a very high level. Yeah, because we can do it, but not in our own country. Yeah.
So they living and they become immigrants in other countries.
Yeah. Yeah. We have lots of them. Lots. For example, we just had a Nobel Prize in physics, and he did not work in Italy. He worked for American universities.
Okay. Okay, please, Ibu.
Okay, hello, good afternoon, Mr. Giuseppe CATOZZELLA, Ibu Henny, Pak Ator, and other colleagues who are coming here. I'm Muti, and I'm working now with CSGS in one of the projects named Blue Urban. And actually, I had a questions regarding the biggest issue that actually always coming on my mind when we come to Europe, or especially when we study in Europe, regarding what is the solution itself for the migration. And mostly, many literature say that the Europe has to integrate with the migrants to overcome all the problems. But then, in the case of Germany, I see like when Angela Merkel make a policy regarding the open policy for the immigrants, and when many people coming into the country, and actually now they are facing also a crisis to spend a lot of money to pay for them. And what I'm asking is, as you have traveled across the countries and you see many cases in different worlds facing the refugees itself, do you think that the integration between the local people and the migrants is something that is possible? And what are the driving factors that can make that situation happens? Because even I talk with many European people that they are very skeptical about that, because at the end they say it's about the competition between the existing ones and between those who are coming. So it is really possible, and how can we make it really become integrated? Because I myself, when I was there, it's really challenging how we can be accepted as a minority there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Well, there's like two important things. Two important factors. One is a cultural factor, and the second one is an historical factor. So within Europe, there are countries that received migrants because they were richer already. They received migrants since, I don't know, 100 years or 150 years. For example, UK, for example, Germany, for example, France. The richest countries have started receiving migrants from other countries, including Italy, since let's say 100 years ago. Then there's other countries which were poorer, like the countries in the south of Europe, just as Italy, Spain, Greece, Portugal, which are starting receiving migrants just nowadays. It's very it has been happening in the last years. So this is a very important historical factor, because you need time, like foreign people need time and generations to be integrated inside another, another nation or another time. It needs time and generations. Like we call it second generation to say the people who are born from someone who migrated. It's called second generation. And then there's third generation. So normally, like the first generation doesn't really speak the language or speaks it not very well. Then the second generation, who is born in the new country, of course, speaks fluently the language and it's more integrated. And then the third generation, even more. So this is the historical factor. But then there's also a cultural one. And as I was mentioning during my lecture, the thing is that politics got in the way. And when you start saying publicly that foreign people are illegal and are all the bad that can happen to a country, then this saying is very sensitive to some of the people that cannot, reach the end of the month, that are the poorest. If as a public figure, you say, us as a country, we have some problems. And then you can enumerate these problems. For example, the loss of jobs, the economy doesn't grow, infrastructures have to be fixed, like problems. But if you, as a public figure, say, all these problems, which are actually old problems, they don't come from us. All these problems come from the foreign people that come to our country to invade it. This is an illogical thing, but incredibly enough, people believe it because it focuses on a very intimate psychological click, which is, it's easier for me to give the shame to someone else than to give it to myself. If something doesn't work in my life, it's more difficult to say, oh, it's my fault. It's way easier to say, it's not my fault. It's their fault, someone else's fault. This was the same mechanism that happened in the Second World War with Hitler and Mussolini. No? All Europe after 1929, the big crisis that started in the US, that big crisis, of course, passed all over the world and reached Europe as well. So Europe was facing an enormous economical crisis. The very ingenious thought of these two evil men, Hitler and Mussolini, was people are starving in Europe, in Italy, in Germany. People are losing their jobs. Okay, we will not say that it's our inner fault, that it's our country's fault, and that we have to do something for it. We will say it's their fault, the Hebrews' fault. It's totally logical, but that worked. That worked because people, as I just said, are more keen to give the fault not to themselves, but to others. So that's why it works. So this is a cultural factor that makes what you said more difficult. That's why it's difficult, and it takes generations to integrate. That makes integration more difficult because there's always this public talk saying it's their fault. They are, they are here to steal your jobs. They are here to steal your money. They are even here to steal your land. There's, this propaganda keeping on going on, and people believe this propaganda. So this generates hate and generates an era, as I just said, of no dialogue. And an era of no dialogue and no integration leads to an era of war. This is why we are facing war again after 80 years. Like historians say that there is a curve that lasts for 70, 80 years, like 2 generations and a half. After 2 generations and a half, we lose the memory of what it was. So that's why now, after 80 years from the Second World War, we are kind of getting there again. Countries are closing. There's a huge speech of hate. Wars emerge. And that's why we have to be very aware of what's going on.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Because the time is very limited, I think we have to give applause to Giuseppe CATOZZELLA. We just discussed about the reflection of the relation of self and others in the literature, and also that today we also heard about the reflection on the relationship between literature and silence to the migration movement, philosophy, and the words of Primo Levi. Thank you very much, Giuseppe CATOZZELLA. So we hope this is not the first, this is not the last, yeah? We will always welcome if you come to Indonesia and give another lecture to students. Thank you. I think we ask Ibu Maria and Giuseppe to approach to the stage because our director will hand over the token, university token, please.
Bukunya biar kelihatan malah. Bukunya biar kelihatan.